So what if some people's lingering issues just boil down to lacking a goal that is big enough to make them lock in? A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. There's a famous paper by Killingsworth and Gilbert titled A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind. The title is indeed the gist of the paper. The experiment found that people were unhappy when they were not engaged with what they were doing and they were just thinking about the past or the future. They developed this web app for the iPhone that basically contacted the participants of the study at random moments during the day, asked them a set of questions, and then they logged it in a database. The two basic questions they asked were, what are you doing right now? And how are you feeling right now? What they wrote was that multi-level regression revealed that people were less happy when their minds were wandering than when they were not. And this was true during all activities, including the least enjoyable. Although people's minds were more likely to wander to pleasant topics than to unpleasant topics or neutral topics, people were no happier when thinking about pleasant topics than about their current activity, and were considerably unhappier when thinking about neutral topics or unpleasant topics than about their current activity. So it's interesting to note that ADHD, an affliction that scatters focus and makes the mind wander, increases the risk of depression. So the thing is, thinking about how bad things are only makes it worse. Abigail Shrier wrote this great book titled Bad Therapy on how the overuse of therapy in teens to children is infantilizing their psyche. An over-reliance on their therapist strips them of the ability to figure out what to do with the emotions that reality provokes in them.
I never considered that thinking about your problems all the time and talking about your problems all the time literally make the problems grow.
I mean, it's the number one symptom of depression is what they call rumination, this pathological obsessing over your pain. One of the reasons that doing anything, you know that running errands is good for your mental health? Getting out of your house and accomplishing anything is good for you. But sitting around talking and thinking about your problems, that's a bad habit. And the best cognitive behavioral therapists and others, the ones who do really well with depression, the first thing they do is try to break that bad pattern. But a lot of therapists just indulge it.
So the key symptom of depression, rumination. How can we avoid rumination? Engage yourself in a task. With that in mind, consider this quote from Viktor Frankl's The Will to Meaning. At this point in the book, Viktor Frankl is talking about how he's talking to an American psychoanalyst. He says, there he said he found a lower frequency of neurosis as compared with the United States. He added that this might be traced to the fact that in communist countries, as he felt, people are more often confronted with a task to complete. This speaks in favor of your theory, he concluded, that meaning direction and task orientation are important in terms of mental health. Later, I quoted the American psychoanalyst to some Polish psychiatrists. I said, you are less neurotic than the Americans because you have more tasks to complete, I told them, and they smugly smiled. But do not forget, I added, that the Americans have also retained the freedom to choose their tasks. And they stopped smiling. The point here is not that you should be a communist to be happier. The point is, as Viktor Frankl said, task orientation is important in terms of mental health. So with all this in mind, the question becomes, at what point does constantly talking about your problems to a therapist just become another form of rumination? Constantly thinking about your problems and thinking about how bad things are is rumination. And that is one of the key symptoms of depression. So in a way, is over talking about your problems, talking about your problems too much, is that a kind of rumination that could be simulating depression?